like Robotech. I mean, it's happened elsewhere. Like by the year 2001, we would have colonized space and
experienced forces beyond all comprehension.
Okay, I stopped it on that date on purpose. So anyway, one thing we've done that, one of the things that's helped us out greatly was that when Carl MACEK back then had stitched together Robotech, he had stitched together the story in 3 grand generations. And in a way, when we digitally remastered Robotech for DVD a few years ago, we had decided to kind of follow the tradition of Macross and add dates to the new generation in the style of the Macross saga, and so that we actually have the story moved a little bit farther in the future, all the way to the year 2042, or in the Shadow Chronicles, we actually had the date pegged at 2044.
That year is never going to get here.
Yeah. Of course, we could always future-proof it by moving it all the way to 3000, but anyway. So one of the people I wanted to introduce you that I'm very, very honored to have here among us is the Grand Poobah himself. Actually, if you look at the photos, that's then and now, back in the 80s, and very recently it's Carl MACEK and executive producer Ahmed Agrama. And also in the picture there in the foreground is from Tatsunoko Productions, Kenji Yoshida, who has since passed away, who was one of the Japanese producers on Robotech. But anyway, I'd like to introduce Carl MACEK. He's also worked on novels. In the meantime, he's become a very accomplished science fiction writer, working on other great projects, such as Akira on his own. And so I'd like to bring Carl up to the stage. Everybody, big hand to Carl.
The surprise guest.
Actually, before we go further, I'd like to see if there's somebody in the audience who'd like to ask one question for Carl before we move on further.
Actually, to make this easier, anyone who asks a question can come up here and also pick a free prize from the table.
I have a question.
Oh.
Hi, Mr. MACEK, this question is for you. Hi. I'm an educator. I teach 5th grade, and I teach children to write. What was it that first inspired you to become a writer? And was there anybody in particular that inspired you to go on and become a science fiction nut, so to speak?
I've actually never been asked that, but I started making films in high school. And I made some pretty outrageous films in high school and college that I thought were interesting. But I was actually a biology major. I wasn't in the communications field. And I finally realized, because when I was going to college, it was before there were computers and calculators. I was dealing with slides. And in science, you really had to be adept at numbers, and I was not very good at it. And so I finally decided not to pursue my science career, and I ended up in the communications department, and I got a degree in the theory and criticism of the visual media.
Wow.
An esoteric degree. And I learned how to be a film critic and a writer. And during my tenure for a variety of studios and journals, magazine, I started to gravitate towards science fiction. I worked on films like Star Wars and Alien and Dune and a variety of things in a marketing and promotional capacity. I got into Blue Skies, which is development. And from being in development, I started to write. And the very first thing that I wrote that was partially original was Robotech.
Excellent.
Even though I'd written some comic books previous to that. But Robotech was my first big effort. And fun and exhilarating, and also a unique opportunity to try to give storytelling a kind of evergreen quality that you don't see that often. And I was taught in college by some really well respected screenwriters. So I have an old school style. I write in the style of like in the 40s or 50s film writer. I don't write contemporarily the way film schools teach people to write today. So I have a different outlook on how scripts are written. That's really where it is.
Very nice, thank you. Well, we certainly appreciate your writing. So
Well,
thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Come on up.
I don't care.
You know what, we'll allow 2 more questions before we move on to the next subject.
Okay. I just was wondering, how does it feel to start like what probably was a small or a big break for you, but like it's now like this huge thing that's still going and has a fan base all around the world. And I mean, I'm sure you didn't know then. How does it feel to be speaking to us right now about what you did 20-something years ago?
To be honest, you may have heard me say this before, but it's absolutely true. The very first time that Robotech was broadcast anywhere in the United States was on KCOP Channel 13 in Los Angeles on the Friday before the series was to launch officially. I don't remember the exact date, but whatever the Monday when episode 1 of Robotech was going to air, on the Friday beforehand, I had cobbled together a thing called Codename Robotech. And it was a way to introduce the potential audience to what Robotech was going to be like over the next 13 weeks. And Harmony Gold was really excited to have it on the air and broadcast in LA because that's where they were located. So they threw a kind of a premiere party after the show had aired. And during the festivities, I walked over to the owner of Harmony Gold, amazing fellow named Frank Agrama. And I said, you know, Frank, I don't know if you believe me, but I think that people will be talking about the show for years after. And I wouldn't be surprised that 10 years after the show's on, people are still going to be talking about it. And now, 25 years later, it's reaching different generations of viewers in the States, as you say, and around the world. And it's fascinating because what we tried to do when we were writing it was to create an evergreen story that could work in a cycle of about every 7 or 8 years, because that's when you get a new generation of viewers that are open to seeing it. The sad thing is, had Robotech been produced 10 years later, where the animation was that much more exciting and that much more fluid, it might even be bigger than it is today. It's a unique property, and I think that hopefully it'll be around for kids in 7 years and 7 years after that to watch and enjoy and hopefully get something out of it.
Thank you.
Oh, that was going to be my question, but Carl.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people in this room got hooked on what was back then called Japanese animation or Jap animation, which we now call anime. Did you foresee that insofar as like using Robotech to express or share your appreciation for the art form to everybody else?
Actually, I always called it anime. There were a couple of guys that called it Japanimation, which I always felt was like really an insulting thing, but I've always considered it anime. Because when I was in the mid-70s, I was a college librarian, and I ran a facility at California State University at Brooklyn called the Archive of Popular Culture. And I was bombarded by college students coming in telling me about Japanese animation that was on TV. At the time it was on a Spanish language station, and they were showing giant robot shows in primitive Spanish dubs. And I liked it. And I had seen Macross before I got to work on it, and I realized that it was really cool. The animation storytelling was different. Everything about it had a freshness, even back in the 80s. To my way of thinking, and I really was trying to find an opportunity to bring the kind of stuff into the United States.